Hello and welcome to Journeys and Journals. And if you've got a heart, we've got the program for you. Look at our guests. They are
Chuck Brainard,
Marlyn Taylor,
Doug Beck.
And these three guys have hearts. I want to tell you, they've got a heart. As if the visual wasn't enough to prove it, let's just find out what else they have in common. What's your story?
Well, my story started on a cold winter morning in December. It was the 22nd, as a matter of fact. And we got up in the morning, and my wife said, "Do you smell smoke?" And I went downstairs and found out that our house basement was fully involved. And because of the venting, it went to the second floor and the first floor. And while they were fighting the fire, I was complaining about not feeling well. The paramedics put a lead on me and a monitor, and I'll never forget the quote. The quote was, "You do know that I should transport you to the hospital, don't you?" And I said, "Yes, I do." So they took me to Three Rivers. As we were leaving, the fire broke through the roof. And I got to Three Rivers, and of course, all heart surgeries, if you're going to have bypass, end up at the Rogue Valley Medical Center. So the following day, I was transported down there.
Now you're talking about this house.
I'm talking about that house.
And this is what happened in the fire?
That is the breakthrough of the outside, and then you saw the balcony on the second floor. You can see that there's fire there, and then it went through the roof also. So
you didn't stay around to watch this fire?
No, I did not.
The ambulance came and...
Well, when there's a fire, paramedics are at the scene in case anything happens to any of the fire.
For the firemen.
For the firemen. And because I was complaining about not feeling well, they checked me out, and that's when they took me to Three Rivers, and then on down to Rogue Valley.
That's how you got this nice pillow.
That's how I got this nice pillow. And that was after a five-way bypass on the 26th, day after Christmas.
Now, what's your story, Chuck? How did you get that pillow?
Well, I felt just really poor for, probably 10 years. And doctors didn't seem to be able to find anything really wrong with me, very serious, until I put me on a treadmill test, and I flunked it at level 2, and he said, you know, I probably should look up a cardiologist. And the cardiologist, after checking me over, said, you know, you don't fit the profile of any of what typical heart.
Because you were quite young.
Yeah, I was
healthy,
young. That's
hardy.
true. I was 52 years old. So, and I was always pretty active.
Very physically fit.
And so he informed me that the real right way to do that would be to have an angiogram, and I really didn't want to do that either, but I did. I asked him his opinion. I said, well, if this was you, what would you do? He'd said, well, I'm active, I like to do things, and I would want to know. And so I said, okay. And it's then when they all found that I was just waiting to go off with a heart attack. And
so your pillow is older than these guys' pillow.
Yeah, that's true. This is almost 19 years.
I think you're the youngster, but you had the heart incident earliest.
That's true.
The guy over there is old Doug. He's been married to me for 53 years. Where'd you get your heart?
Well, I woke up one morning at about 2 a.m. and I had an awful case of heartburn. So I got up and took a Tums, went back to bed and went to sleep. Woke up about 7 and it was worse. And I told Bernie, we better go to the ER. So she hauls me down there and I said, you go get some breakfast somewhere and let these people see what's going on. So she did. And they hauled me in and they x-rayed me and fiddled around. And this doctor said, oh, you know, we'll put a little stent in there, you'll be fine. A little later he said, I wouldn't put a stent in that mess for tea in China. The next thing I knew, I was on an ambulance headed for RVMC over in Medford. And I remember going by Rogue River because they got the new bridge. And I remember going over the top of Blackwell Hill. Then I remember the tires screeching in the parking lot of RVMC. And they backed up to a loading dock and the doors flew open and a bunch of guys came in and grabbed the gurney I was on and ran down the hall. Everybody's yelling, minutes or muscle. Oh dear. Banged into an operating room and there was a bunch of people in blue scrubs standing around in there. And I thought, you know, they look like a bunch of deer in the headlights. They're as scared as I am. And that was the end of it. They put me out. I woke up sometime later with a breathing tube down my throat, and they informed me that I'd had a quintuple bypass. Fortunately, Dr. Folsom, the guy that did it, he was busy that morning getting ready to go to church. They called up and convinced him, no, stick around for just one more. So he did. Bless his heart. And
somebody else knows Dr. Folsom, huh?
Dr. Folsom did mine,
Yep.
and this might be a good time to interject that should you have the event that Doug had, one of the best things you can possibly do is call 911. Mm-hmm. There's a system in Oregon, and that is called ASAT, and what they would do is if you're having an event, they would have taken you directly to RCVM rather than to Rogue Valley. So calling 911 is really a good thing to do.
Instead of saying, Bernie, take me to the hospital.
Yeah, which is what we all want to do. That's what I would have done too, until I was told that the better option is to call the ambulance.
good.
Well, now, so many of your stories are so similar and so interesting, but you've got a story beyond your heart attack, beyond your zipper. Y'all had surgery, right?
Yes.
Zippers that put you back, probably legs that you got grafted.
Yes.
Some life back into you. Now, why is this all so important? What are we talking about here? Why? What's the health connection between your incident, and your incident?
Stress.
I agree. Stress is one of the major factors.
Yeah.
I think another thing is denial is a factor because it took 10 years for my event to happen.
And Chuck said 10.
And Chuck said 10. And all that time I was saying there was nothing wrong with me. And I became really good at hiding any of my symptoms so that no one could tell.
Are you telling me denial is not just a river in Egypt?
I am telling
Where
you
the
that.
crocodile lives.
I'm telling you that. That's right. And at some point in time, it gets to a point that you can't do that. I think the important thing, too, is that what we're really talking about, or what we would talk to a patient about when they're coming out of surgery, is lifestyle change. And I think that in many cases, I used heredity because I had a father that had a bad heart. I had an aunt that had a bad heart. So it was something I couldn't do anything about.
It was inevitable.
It was inevitable. But the reality is that I also wasn't exercising a lot. I was also eating a lot of fat. I also smoked in my younger years. I knew that I had diabetes. I knew that I had high blood pressure, hypertension. And so this is a heart attack waiting to happen.
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5. And still I was denying.
Okay.
Until the fire brought me to my senses, and there was no chance to deny any further than that.
So you'd had inklings that something wasn't right. Doug, too?
I don't know if I had too many inklings, but
It
I
knocked.
had a pituitary tumor. And I had the first symptoms of that in 1964.
So
And they did, doctors that did, I went through 5 different doctors. And all of them ran a whole bunch of tests. They missed doing the one test that would have told them what was wrong.
well, the stories are so similar in other ways
Yeah.
that let's get to the important plug that you'd like to tell us about why you and Chuck would go to the hospital on Christmas Day. What's that about?
Well, in my case, someone from Mended Hearts did come on Christmas Day and walked into the hospital before I had my heart surgery, which was scheduled for the 26th. And it wasn't so much that what they said, it was the fact that they cared. It was someone who had been through this themselves.
A guy?
A guy. We have women in our group who have also had heart surgery. He came back also after I had had my surgery and talked to me again, and left me with one of the brochures, pamphlets, path packs that we hand out. This one- After the cath lab. That's people who have stents. And stents are becoming much more common now. It used to be surgeries were 100%, and then it got to a point now that there's probably one surgery for every 4 stents that are done.
Well, describe stent, just in brief.
A stent? It is a metal collapsible or expandable device that goes into the artery, and they can go in through the groin, or now they're going in through the wrist, and they thread up through, and they find the blockage
Right into your heart.
No, into the vein. Or the artery. The artery that's going there. They find the blockage, open it up, and then it expands, and the stent is there so that that blockage is opened up. And in my case, I had blockages that were 98%.
And Chuck, how much block did you have?
I was not a couple of what they call widowmaker, which is 95 on each wing of the LAD, and but I did have five bypass, one being the mammary and 4 others.
So 95%, you were limited to 5%, running on a 5% engine?
In a critical part of the heart, the left heart, and so I'm thankful to be alive. Thankful for the great service that we have at the Rogue Valley for all that they do there.
And no wonder you're willing to plug this. What would you say to somebody out there that just has little pains now and then? Little shortness of breath, little...
Well, information is one of the greatest things we can have, and the more, thankfully, there's more information out there nowadays. Now, my situation, I heard total cholesterol, and it was a little high, but nowadays, if we can inform ourselves, information is available out there on our lab tests. If we will break it down to know what our LDL is and our HDL and know the ratio between the two, all this is important to you know, in addition to our exercise and our diet. Diet's very important, I think, too.
Are you saying get smart?
Yeah, I think we do have, as individuals, we're responsible for our body, and we need to have the information and not rely on so many others.
Well, this says the gift of hope. This is in your packet. Who gets this packet?
All of the patients that we visit who are coming out of surgery, I was left with this package, and basically it says that the gift of hope is that you can get back to a normal life and do things, and we stand as proof that you can get back and function in a normal life. But I want to go back and piggyback off of what Chuck said, and my message to someone coming out of surgery is to get smart and change your diet, get smart and do your exercise. But beyond that, I would even go back and I would say to those teenagers and those parents of kids is get smart. This didn't happen to me because it happened to me because I was adult, but it was probably, I was laying the groundwork of all of the things that were happening when I was a teenager, the lifestyle I had at that point. And so when someone is, if you're young, now's the time to prevent. And you can do it by eating better, and you can do it by exercise.
Eating better?
You don't have to go through these things. For someone coming out of surgery, one of the big things that I would emphasize is going to the rehabilitation program,
definitely.
the exercise program.
And it's in most local communities, so you don't have to drive to.
Yes.
I was right over here at the old hospital.
Exactly.
And,
now it's at the Three Rivers. It's right next door now.
What do you think I'm doing here? It sure smells good, guys.
Well, you're getting part of your 5 a day.
5 a day? You brought the whole big bowl. Tell me, what's 5 a day?
5 a day is 5 fruits and 5 vegetables, 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day.
It smells so good.
And a lot of people think that that would be really hard, but you eat that grapefruit right there, and you're probably eating at least 2 servings right at the point.
Do I need sugar and salt on it?
No, you don't need that. I think that we get very concerned about eating 5 fruits and vegetables a day, a serving, because we think that it's a lot. But in our lifestyle has evolved so that we probably rarely go to a restaurant where we have, we think a serving is a restaurant serving, and that's probably 2 or maybe 3 servings of vegetables that you get on a plate.
I don't know if this is making your mouth water, but it sure does taste good. Without sugar or salt. Just the way it came from the tree. I am so, let's promote good health. And walking, that's a part of your program?
Yes, definitely. They say 30 minutes a day, and I'm hearing that up to 60 minutes a day is even better.
Oh my!
But
most of you are at retirement age, so that shouldn't be too hard to cut out one TV show.
No matter what it is you're doing, there's always somebody willing to stand there and say, that's not enough. You've got to do a competition marathon to get the right exercise.
Doug, you've got a funny shirt on. What's that story? You didn't stop with the bypass.
No, bypass is in 2004, and in 2009, I ruined a perfectly good Christmas party by having some major shots of auricular fibrillation, AFib. And that got me hauled off to the hospital a second time and back over to RVMC, and they installed a Medtronic defibrillator, which keeps the atrial fib from happening, resynchronizer to get the 2 sections of the heart beating properly, pacemaker because I was very bradycardic. I was down in the 30 beats a minute area because Cardiac bypass surgery does mess up your timing sometimes. And then if all else fails, it'll shock you and get you going. It's never shocked me, but I have heard tales.
Now, your shirt is a good
Oh, well.
Your friend.
I knew a guy back at Medtronic who was an executive back there who once used to work for me down in Mountain View, California. So I called him up and I says, "Hey, Chris, I'm using one of your devices." He says, "You get a T-shirt." Here came this anatomically correct T-shirt showing where the Medtronic device goes and all the leads.
Oh,
great.
we're patched together one way or another. I want to find out about this program that's ongoing. Is it just locally here in the Rogue Valley about people who've had similar surgeries to you three?
It's a national organization. It was founded in, or started in 1952 in Boston. And the way it happened was there were actually 4 patients sitting in a waiting room of a doctor and saying, "Gee, I wished there was somebody I could talk to about having the same problems that I have and how they felt after this came and why I can't sleep except sitting in a chair. I can't sleep when I'm in the bed." And the doctor happened to overhear them and he came out and he says, "Why don't you start a group?" And he said, "And I will help you." And that was Dr. Dwayne Harkin. And in '52, that was pretty early on for heart surgeries to be taking place.
Or for group, too.
And now we have 300 chapters in the country, 1,800 members. I think that they say 5 million people were diagnosed with heart disease. It's not really a disease, it's a condition. And we saw personally probably 200,000 last year. That means that there are 4,800,000 people that haven't been reached. But with programs like this, maybe there's a chance that you reach them more to get the message out of things you can do to prevent the problem.
Okay, so how do they find out where a chapter is? How do they find out what the national hotline is? Whatever it is, to give us we'll put up that number. It's called what?
Mended Hearts, and it would be .org.
Okay.
And you'll find it in the packet.
Now,
And our local chapter, certainly you could call me, and I think you would be receptive to have phone
Right.
calls.
Sure.
So
your number's going to be right up here with your name.
Now,
Why-
Marlyn is our president, and Marlyn is the perfect president. I'll never forget our annual picnic we had. Marlyn, shortly after his heart surgery, you could just tell at that picnic that he was gung-ho for this, for what we were doing, and he's just ideal for our Mended Hearts, and he's a great president, and we meet at the Smullen Center, and tell them a little more about that when we meet, Marlyn.
the third Wednesdays of most months.
So if
And,
somebody has never heard of you before, they can just show up there.
Yes,
What's
public
this
is
time?
always invited.
What's the time?
1:30, third Wednesday of every month. Well, I shouldn't say every month. In December, we have a Christmas lunch, so we don't have a meeting. And on January, when the weather is not so good, we don't meet. But then starting in February, we would begin again.
Now, Marlyn, if I understand it, this is a general invitation to men or women out there who think they might have a problem.
Absolutely.
Now, you all have zippers that they took veins out of your legs?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And has that given you problems?
No.
No.
Not me.
No.
They just sewed back up and you're doing fine.
Absolutely. I'm doing fine. You
I'm doing fine too. What the heck?
Yeah, I'm feeling great.
Better than I did before I went in.
Yeah.
By 100%.
Well, folks, you've heard it here on Better Life TV. What's with the health best?
This is called Heartbeat, and this is a quarterly magazine that all of us as members get from the organization. This one was devoted to just different people in the organization nationwide, a little bit of what their story was and what they're doing now. The main thing, well, here's a great title. It takes one to know one.
Okay.
And one of the doctors that spoke to us said, I didn't understand what a difference it made until I had my heart surgery. This is a heart surgeon. And someone came and visited me, and when someone said, you ought to do this, there was someone who had been there, done that, had the same problem. And it had an impact that when I talk to people and I tell them things, they'll come back and they say, I don't remember you said that. Everyone that leaves the third floor of cardiac gets visited by the education nurses. And they say, I don't remember that.
Oh, right.
But if they get a third visit, you're talking 3 now, and 3 seems to be very important in life. You know, I didn't know, I've heard of it, I knew it all along.
Okay.
And so we are a team and we're partners with the hospital, the doctors, the nurses, and to make this thing work.
When you say partners, thanks, partners, for showing up today. Thanks for sharing your hearts, your new hearts, with Better Life and with our TV audience, because I'm sure somebody's watching out there saying, they are talking to me.
Take your statins and stay away from places that serve large pieces of hamburger with cheese on them.
You heard it here. I'm Bernie Martin Beck saying thank you so much for tuning in.